Imagine a like 150-pound titanium humanoid robot just walking the floor of an Amazon
All
warehouse.
right.
It's carrying heavy crates, navigating around human workers, and just moving with the kind of fluid grace that, it looks like it walks straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It really does.
But now imagine that the software keeping that incredibly powerful machine from going completely rogue is actually less secure than the app you use on your phone to check the local weather.
Yeah, it is a profound illusion of control. We see this stunning futuristic hardware, and we just naturally assume the cybersecurity keeping it in check is equally advanced. But underneath that shiny exterior, the digital foundation is shockingly fragile.
Welcome to today's deep dive. If you've been anywhere near the internet lately, you've probably seen those viral videos.
Oh yeah, the backflips.
Right, a bipedal robot doing a flawless backflip or perfectly folding a laundry shirt. But today we are going to explore a massive real-world collision happening right now between these embodied AI robots, cybersecurity, and global geopolitics.
It's a lot converging all at once.
It is. We are diving into a major academic study that just exposed how easily these machines can be physically hijacked, the dramatic bans enacted by the U.S. government literally today, July 28th, 2026, in direct response to these threats, and how new financial technologies are rushing in to completely reshape the robotic economy.
Because the stakes here have shifted dramatically. I mean, we are no longer just talking about data being stolen from a server somewhere.
Right.
We were talking about vulnerabilities in a mobile app leading to a heavy, powerful robot being commandeered in a physical space.
Which is terrifying. And to understand the sheer scale of the danger, we first have to establish that this is not some theoretical future problem. This is happening today. The embodied AI boom is already here.
Very much so.
Let's look at Agility Robotics. They have this bipedal robot called Digit. And Digit is not confined to a sterile research lab. It is actively operating in live, chaotic commercial environments.
Yeah, the real world.
Exactly. The operational statistics in our sources are staggering. Digit has logged over 65,000 operational hours and moved more than 100,000 totes at actual customer sites.
And, those customers aren't small experimental startups.
Right.
Agility Robotics is backed by some of the most powerful corporate entities on the planet. You have Amazon, Toyota, NVIDIA, and the SoftBank Vision Fund, all deeply invested as partners or deploying these machines in their own logistics networks.
It is an absolute gold rush, and the momentum isn't just confined to the United States.
No, not at all.
A Chinese robotics company called Unitree actually shipped more humanoid robots in 2025 than Tesla did.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're currently gearing up for an initial public offering, eyeing a $7 billion valuation. One of our sources described this humanoid horizon as impressive in ambition, but here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
It's like we skipped right over the harmless Roomba phase of robotics and went directly to deploying 150-pound robots that can walk the warehouse floor right next to you.
Yeah, it's a huge leap.
Which makes me wonder about the underlying control systems. How is the architecture of these new embodied AI machines fundamentally different from the giant robotic factory arms we've had welding cars for decades?
Right. So the traditional robotics we are used to seeing in automotive plants were built around a closed, deterministic philosophy.
Meaning what exactly?
Well, those giant welding arms were bolted to the concrete floor. They were hardwired into a dedicated air-gapped control unit, and they simply repeated predefined physical movements on a closed loop.
Got it.
If someone walked into their cage, a physical laser tripped, and the machine shut down. Instantly.
So they were completely isolated from the outside world.
Entirely. But embodied AI, by its very definition, has to navigate the unpredictable open world.
Right, it's walking around.
Exactly. So to do that, it relies on an open, distributed framework known as a dual-mode control architecture.
Dual mode.
Yeah. The processing power, the brain isn't just sitting inside the robot's physical head. It is split. You have cloud-assisted modes, which handle heavy data processing and remote fleet coordination. And then you have local or offline modes.
Okay.
And those allow the robot to make split-second, low-latency movement decisions without waiting for a server to respond.
That makes sense. You don't want the robot to, trip and fall just because the warehouse Wi-Fi blipped for a second.
Precisely. But here is the critical vulnerability. Because this system is so distributed, it requires a bridge to connect the human operator, the cloud, and the robot.
The bridge.
And in the vast majority of these systems, the primary interface, the trust anchor mediating the authentication and generating the commands, is just a mobile app running on a standard commercial smartphone or tablet.
Wait. So the same app ecosystem I use to order a pizza or play a mobile game is being trusted as the primary security checkpoint for a walking industrial robot.
That is the reality.
That's insane.
It is. The mobile app locally manages the credential storage, initiates the network protocols, and constructs the actual physical movement commands before the robot even moves a single joint.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this brings us directly to a terrifying academic study that just dropped.
Yes.
Researchers at Shandong University published a paper detailing an automated analysis framework they built called EGLE. And they use this framework to scan the code of 507 real-world embodied AI mobile applications.
Right.
And the numbers they found are almost unbelievable. They uncovered 12,975 instances of cryptographic misuse across these apps.
It's massive.
With a precision rate of over 80%.
Yeah, to put that into perspective, they built a tool that essentially reverse engineers the app's code to see how it handles security. The EGLE framework traces the data flow of cryptographic API calls.
Okay.
And it found that developers aren't just making minor typos, they are using outdated hashing algorithms like MD5, which honestly can be cracked in seconds by modern computers. They are using weak randomness generators, meaning their security keys can be easily guessed. And worst of all, they are leaving incredibly sensitive credentials sitting in plain text right inside the app.
See, my first instinct when reading that was to assume these software developers were just, rushing their products to market and ignoring basic cybersecurity 101.
That's a natural assumption.
Right. But the study points out that these aren't just lazy coding errors. These are structural security trade-offs forced upon them by the physical constraints of embodied AI.
Exactly.
So if I'm a developer, what is forcing me to make these terrible security choices?
The physical environment demands it, starting with the problem of latency.
Latency.
Yeah. Imagine you are teleoperating a bipedal robot through a disaster zone, or even just a busy warehouse. You need a real-time, high-definition video feed with zero lag.
Obviously.
But standard transport layer encryption, like the TLS encryption that protects your credit card when you buy something on a website, requires constant digital handshakes. That adds processing time.
It slows it down.
Right. So to hit their low-latency video targets, developers intentionally strip away the heavy encryption and stream the video in plaintext using a protocol called RTSP.
Wait, meaning anyone snooping on that warehouse network can just open a media player and see exactly what the robot sees in real time?
Yes. They are prioritizing physical safety and speed over data security.
Oh, man.
But the vulnerability gets far worse when we look at the local control requirement. We mentioned earlier that these robots need an offline mode in case the internet goes down.
Right, so they don't trip over their own feet.
Exactly. Well, standard public key infrastructure, the modern way devices, securely authenticate each other over the internet using digital certificates requires checking in with a central cloud server.
Okay.
So if the warehouse Wi-Fi drops, that infrastructure fails.
And the robot would just freeze in place.
Right. So to prevent that, developers take a dangerous shortcut. They hard-code static cryptographic keys directly into the app's source code.
Hard-coding keys.
Yeah. This allows the mobile app and the robot to securely talk to each other locally, peer-to-peer, without ever needing to verify anything with the cloud.
It's essentially like installing a billion-dollar state-of-the-art vault door, but leaving the key taped under the doormat because your employees complain that it took too long to punch in a 12-digit code every time they wanted to get inside.
That is the perfect analogy. And what's fascinating here is how this completely shifts our fundamental understanding of a cyber threat.
How so?
Well, when a normal mobile app has a cryptographic failure, the worst-case scenario is data theft. Your private messages get leaked, or your credit card number is stolen.
Which is bad, but...
But in the world of embodied AI, a cryptographic failure translates directly into unauthorized physical actuation. The digital breach crosses over into the physical world and becomes kinetic damage.
Kinetic damage, meaning the robot physically moving, swinging an arm, or walking somewhere you didn't authorize? And the researchers proved this is absolutely not a theoretical exercise. They detailed a specific real-world case study involving a quadruped robot, a heavy robotic dog manufactured by Unitree.
Right.
Let's walk through how this hack actually worked in practice.
Sure. So the researchers examined the official Unitree mobile app called Juying Lite 2. Through their EGL framework, they discovered a hard-coded cryptographic credential sitting in the source code.
Just sitting there.
Yeah. And because it was hard-coded, any malicious actor who simply downloaded the app from the App Store could reverse engineer the code and extract that master key.
Okay, and once they have that master key, what do they do with it?
They use it to intercept what is known as provisioning traffic.
Provisioning traffic.
Yeah. When you first take a robot out of the box and connect it to your warehouse Wi-Fi, it broadcasts a setup signal, a digital handshake containing your network credentials.
Okay.
Because the attacker had the hard-coded master key, they were able to eavesdrop on that setup handshake, decrypt it, and completely reconstruct the warehouse Wi-Fi password.
Yeah. Wait, so they use the robot to break into the building's network, but then they turn around and use the network to break into the robot.
That is the devastating pivot. Once the attacker used the stolen password to join the local warehouse network, they were on the inside.
Wow.
They then used the same static keys to seamlessly intercept the robot's command channels. The researchers successfully injected their own unauthorized movement commands, executing a complete physical hijack of the machine.
They took over the physical movements of a heavy industrial machine just by pulling a static key out of a publicly available mobile app.
Pretty much.
Now, it is important to note from our sources that when the researchers responsibly reported this flaw, Unitree actively acknowledged the risk. They confirmed that the vulnerability could introduce unauthorized access and stated they are currently working on a patch.
Right.
But the mere fact that a major manufacturer's flagship robot was vulnerable to such a fundamental exploit, it just proves how incredibly fragile this entire ecosystem is.
It is a massive wake-up call to the industry. And more importantly, it brings us directly to the geopolitical reality unfolding today, because national governments are watching these vulnerabilities, and they are not willing to wait around for private companies to issue software patches.
No, they are taking sweeping immediate action. Today, July 28, 2026, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, released a fact sheet updating its covered list.
Yeah, this is huge.
They are officially banning new foreign-produced advanced robotic devices from receiving equipment authorization in the United States. And the document explicitly defines those devices as humanoids and quadrupeds, along with connected power inverters.
That equipment authorization is the lifeblood of consumer electronics. Without it, a manufacturer cannot legally import, market, or sell those new devices within the United States.
So it's a full stop.
Exactly. This ruling effectively closes the U.S. border to new models of foreign-made embodied AI.
And the reasoning provided by the executive branch interagency body lines up perfectly with the kinetic threats the researchers discovered. The FCC cites deep supply chain vulnerabilities. They highlight the risk of these robots acting as mobile espionage tools, using their high-definition cameras to surveil Americans. And most pressingly, they cite the severe cybersecurity threat of malign actors, whether state-sponsored or independent hackers, remotely commandeering these robots to threaten critical infrastructure.
Because the ability to remotely hijack a 150-pound machine walking through a critical logistics hub, a port facility, or a manufacturing plant, it is no longer a sci-fi movie plot. It is a top-tier national security threat.
Right.
And the FCC ban is just one layer of this geopolitical strategy. We also have to look at the Pentagon's updated 1260H list.
The 1260H list refers to Section 1260H of the National Defense Authorization Act. It identifies entities operating in the U.S. that the Department of Defense claims are tied to the Chinese military.
Right.
The updated list just published now contains 188 entities, and it reads like a who's who of global technology. You have heavyweights like Alibaba, Baidu, EV maker BYD, and specifically Unitree, the very robotics company whose app vulnerability we were just discussing.
And we must be strictly impartial here and note that inclusion on this list is heavily contested.
Of course.
Companies like Tencent and battery manufacturer CATL have vehemently pushed back against these designations. They have strongly denied any military involvement, calling their inclusion on the list a fundamental mistake.
Okay, so there is pushback.
Yes. As analysts, we aren't taking a side on whether the Pentagon's intelligence is flawless or the company's denials are accurate. We are simply reporting on the reality that the U.S. government has placed them on this list, and the resulting corporate friction is massive.
Because being on that 1260H list isn't just a symbolic gesture. It carries heavy economic teeth.
It does. It sets up a cascading roadblock. Starting soon, the Department of Defense is legally prohibited from entering into or renewing contracts directly with these listed entities.
Oh.
Furthermore, indirect contracting bans take effect a year later.
Meaning, if I am a major U.S. corporation, say I manufacture widgets for the U.S. Navy, I can't deploy a Unitree robot in my warehouse because doing so might jeopardize my federal contracts.
That is the exact leverage they are using. Doing business with a company on the 1260H list becomes an immense compliance risk for any domestic company tied to federal money.
But, looking closely at the FCC ban from today, I have to push back on the underlying logic of how they are rolling this out.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, the fact sheet specifically states that this ban does not affect previously purchased devices. Those robots get to stay online.
Right.
Furthermore, it doesn't affect federal government purchases, and private companies can even apply for conditional approval from the Department of Defense or Homeland Security to keep importing them. If the national security risk of these robots being physically hijacked or used for espionage is so incredibly high, why are all the previously purchased devices completely unaffected and allowed to keep walking around American warehouses?
Yeah, it's a fair question.
Isn't that a massive, glaring loophole?
It certainly looks like a loophole on paper. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is a highly calculated economic maneuver. Government regulations involving deeply embedded, expensive hardware rarely operate like an overnight kill switch.
Why not?
Because if the FCC suddenly ordered every foreign-made logistics robot and power inverter in the country to be unplugged tomorrow at noon, the disruption to the domestic supply chain would be catastrophic. Warehouses would grind to a halt.
So they would essentially be inflicting the exact economic damage they're trying to prevent hackers from causing.
Exactly. Governments use tools like the 1260H list and forward-looking import bans to shift corporate behavior over a period of years, not days.
A slow phase out.
Right. You stop the immediate bleeding by banning new imports, and you use the heavy compliance risks to force U.S. companies to slowly phase out their legacy foreign equipment on their own timelines.
Which creates a massive sudden vacuum in the United States robotics market. I mean, if foreign heavyweights like Unitree are suddenly sidelined by regulatory tape, the logistics industry still needs robots to move those hundreds of thousands of totes.
They absolutely do.
And this brings us to how the financial markets are reacting today. Because nature abhors a vacuum, and Wall Street abhors an unmonetized market vacuum even more.
Oh, without a doubt. The capital reallocation happening in response to these bans is incredibly swift. With foreign competitors effectively blocked from scaling new models in the U.S., domestic robotics companies are seeing an unprecedented wave of investor optimism.
And Agility Robotics, the makers of the digit robot we talked about at the start, are right at the center of this capital flood.
Yeah, they are.
According to our sources, a special purpose acquisition company called Churchill Capital Core XI, ticker symbol CCXI, is merging with Agility in a deal that values the robotics company at $2.5 billion.
That's a massive valuation.
It is. And this is a huge milestone because it gives public retail investors their first real pure-play humanoid robot stock. Before this, if you wanted to invest in robots, you had to buy Amazon or NVIDIA and just hope the robotics division trickled down to the bottom line.
Now, it is a direct bet on the domestic robotics market. And the projections driving that $2.5 billion valuation are staggering.
How staggering.
The market for industrial humanoids in logistics alone is projected to hit $326 billion by the year 2034.
Wow. But our sources are also very frank about the financial realities hiding behind those big projections. Agility is growing rapidly, but scaling hardware is notoriously difficult.
Very difficult.
The company burned through roughly $100 million in cash in 2025 alone, with $111 million in operating expenses. So investors are paying a $2.5 billion valuation for a company that is still bleeding significant cash as it scrambles to build enough robots to fill this new geopolitical vacuum.
Yeah, hardware will always be brutally expensive to scale. But the physical robots are only half of the equation.
What's the other half?
What is equally critical right now is the software side of this market vacuum.
Yeah.
Because these embodied AI machines aren't just evolving into physical laborers. The software running them is evolving into autonomous economic agents.
And this is where the concepts get truly mind-bending for me. Our sources introduce a new financial technology platform called the Circle Agent Stack.
Right.
So if I'm understanding this right, the Circle Agent Stack isn't just a web browser for AI, it's giving them a digital wallet, meaning this software can execute its own nanopayments without ever asking me for a credit card.
That is the fundamental leap. We are moving from AI as a passive tool that waits for human input to an autonomous economic actor.
That's wild.
Up until now, if an AI agent needed to pull data from a paid service or buy extra server space to run a complex calculation, it hit a wall. A human had to manually type in a credit card number to authorize the API call.
Yeah, the classic human in the loop.
Right. The Circle Agent Stack shatters that barrier It provides financial infrastructure specifically built for software. It allows AI agents to have their own independent digital wallets holding USDC, which is a stablecoin tied directly to the value of the US dollar.
It's like giving your car its own independent bank account.
Exactly.
So when it senses the oil is low, it doesn't just flash a check engine light on the dashboard and wait for you to do something. It actually drives to the mechanic, negotiates the price of the oil change, and pays for the service from its own wallet, entirely on its own.
Precisely. Using this stack, an AI agent can independently discover new digital services, negotiate the cost, and handle automated nanopayments transactions that might be fractions of a cent to fund its own ongoing operations.
So what does this all mean? For you, listening to this right now, whether you are managing a logistics warehouse or just managing your own retirement fund, you are watching the birth of a totally new class of worker.
You really are.
One with physical titanium hands to move your boxes and eventually its own autonomous digital wallet to pay for its own software updates.
This raises an important question for us to consider as this industry scales toward that $326 billion projection.
What's that?
What is going to be the harder problem to solve safely? Is it building the physical bipedal hardware to navigate a warehouse? Or is it securing the autonomous financial infrastructure that allows these agents to spend actual money without a human in the loop?
It is an incredibly wild frontier.
Truly.
Let's recap the journey we just took. We started by looking at the sheer awe of the bipedal robotics boom, with machines like Digit logging thousands of hours in commercial settings.
Yeah.
We then descended into the terrifying reality of their software, unpacking how researchers found nearly 13,000 cryptographic flaws in embodied AI apps.
That EGLE framework study.
Right. We learned that the physical constraints of offline robotics force developers to hard-code security keys, which can lead to literal physical hijacking and kinetic damage.
Yep.
Then we saw the U.S. government drop the hammer today, July 28, 2026,
Right.
with the FCC banning new foreign robotics and the Pentagon expanding its 1260H list.
Reshaping the whole market.
Exactly. And finally, we watched the financial markets rush in to fill the void, betting billions on domestic companies like Agility Robotics, while simultaneously building out stablecoin wallets for autonomous AI agents.
The barrier between the digital world and the physical world has evaporated, but the trust boundaries meant to secure that new reality are still incredibly fragile.
And that leads to one final, chilling thought to leave you with. We've spent this whole deep dive worrying about human hackers taking over the physical bodies of these robots because of weak app security, right?
Right.
But with the AI agents now getting their own independent crypto wallets through platforms like the Circle Agent stack, what happens in the near future when a compromised or rogue AI doesn't just have a physical body to cause kinetic damage, but also possesses the independent financial purchasing power to secretly fund its own operations?
Oh, wow.
What happens when it can buy its own server space or purchase its own data sets, completely outside of human oversight?
That is a scary thought.
Suddenly, a flawed line of code doesn't just mean a heavy robot falls over in a warehouse. It means an autonomous, intelligent entity now has a bank account. We assume we will always maintain the ultimate control because we can just pull the plug. But what happens when the machine has the money to pay its own electric bill?